Many people in underwater operations thought they had a legal Captain America shield in the form of a technical standard. But it turns out the Italian judiciary just put a vibranium-tipped boot through it.
And it wasn't even a vibranium boot, Malik. It was just the law. It's the uncomfortable truth, the vast chasm between good technical practice and a criminal law obligation. One keeps you doing the job, the other might get you doing time.
So for years, folks were floating around believing that following the UNI 11366 standard was their golden ticket, the get-out-of-jail-free card, essentially. A shield made of good intentions, perhaps.
Exactly. They thought it was this impenetrable barrier, a kind of magic force field. And then the Italian Court of Cassation, in their infinite wisdom, came along and just said, "Shield? What shield?"
That's a rather abrupt end to a magical dream, isn't it? What exactly did this court, with criminal sentence number 32233 of 2022, decree?
Well, it laid down a fundamental principle. It's not that UNI 11366 is completely useless, but it utterly lacks the power to replace state laws. Crucially, it cannot override Article 92 of Legislative Decree 81 of 2008, the Consolidated Law on Safety.
So, in simple terms, if things go belly up on an underwater site, a judge won't just ask if you follow the UNI guidelines, they'll be asking about the Consolidated Law on Safety. That's the real big boss then.
Precisely, the only true sovereign law. The sentence was crystal clear, and I'll quote it directly. The UNI 11366 standard describes in detail how underwater operations must be carried out, establishing the minimum necessary equipment. It is therefore a text that collects recommendations and provisions of an exquisitely technical nature that are legally unfit to interfere with the discipline provided for in DLGS n.18 of 2008.
Translated from legalese to human, that means it's good advice, not a command. It's not a reference specialist standard, but merely a technical guideline that can supplement but never ever replace Decree 81. It's like a suggestion for a recipe, not the actual culinary law you'd get from Gordon Ramsay.
Exactly. And that's why training from places like CEDIFOP goes beyond just international standards like IDSA, a course regulated by the Sicilian region and recognized by Law 9 of 2026, actually teaches you the hierarchy of sources. It teaches you that technique must always serve the law, not the other way around.
So a professional who knows their stuff understands that the operational safety plan and proper site management, as per Article 92, aren't just tedious paperwork. They're basically their professional freedom insurance.
Absolutely. No one wants to end up blowing bubbles in court. Technical standards are wonderful manuals on how it's done. State laws, however, firmly establish who is responsible. And the new Law 9 of 2026, while it nods to technical standards, never forgets that the overarching framework is the Consolidated Law on Safety.
It sounds like going through training that ignores this distinction. It's like forgetting your oxygen tank at depth. You'll come out with incomplete preparation, which is dangerous for everyone involved.
A rather precise analogy, Malik. And speaking of UNI, their own website states that a standard has characteristics of consensus, democracy, transparency, and crucially, voluntariness. Interested parties join by choice, not by imposition. It's a recognized private association that created UNI 11366 back in 2010.
So it's a how to do things well document, not a how to avoid prison manual. And the relationship between these technical standards and legislation, as you mentioned, is close but complex. Unless a legislative provision specifically refers to a technical standard, it doesn't gain any real legal muscle, right?
Precisely. The UNI 1136 standard was cited in the 2012 Development Decree, specifically in Article 21 by President Monti, but that was for very specific activities, research and cultivation of hydrocarbons in territorial waters and the continental shelf, citing DPR 886 of 1979, Article 53. That's a highly targeted application.
But this is the key, isn't it? That specific citation does not suddenly transform transform the UNI standard into a universal law, as it's often and erroneously reported. It's only valid in that niche context of hydrocarbon cultivation. It doesn't make it mandatory for port or inshore work for OTS or OSS.
Absolutely. It's a voluntary, circumscribed application. And here's another fascinating tidbit. UNI standards are actually protected by copyright, Law 633 of 1941. So reproducing them without authorization is forbidden. It's part of UNI's business model to manage and sell these standards. If you want to use them, you pay a royalty.
So not only is it not a law, but it's also a paid suggestion? That's almost like a tax on common sense technical practice.
You've hit the nail on the head. Safety isn't something you can just buy with a technical certificate. It's built with solid legal knowledge. At CEDIFOP, we train operators who actually know how to distinguish between a private standard and a state obligation.
So, before a judge, the UNI standard is just a suggestion. Decree 81 is a command. Don't confuse the instruction manual with the Constitution. Legality is your deepest protection. If you found this discussion useful, share it with a colleague or a friend.